My name's Andrew Rains. I'm a wine educator and part of the team at Okanagan Crush Pad Winery, and today I'm very excited to take you through a virtual tasting of 4 of my favorite wines coming from our 3 different certified organic vineyard sites. Now, when you come and visit us in Summerland, British Columbia and drive up to the Okanagan Crush Pad Winery, on the left-hand side you're going to notice a beautiful vineyard site, which is actually the Switchback Vineyard, home entirely to Pinot Gris grapes. Also in Summerland, we have the Garnet Valley Ranch, which is actually the highest altitude vineyard site in all of the Okanagan. If we then head down to Oliver, we'll come across Secrest Mountain, which is home to our Chardonnay and many other varietals. Now, one of the benefits of having our own 3 certified organic vineyard sites is it really allows us to create wines that reflect the place that they come from, which is part of our winemaking philosophy. We believe very strongly that wine should be met with minimal intervention, and having our own certified organic vineyard sites allows us to create wines that really reflect the terroir from which they came. Now, terroir is a bit of a complicated term, and it's very often misunderstood. The word comes from terre, which is French for dirt, but terroir is a lot more than just the soil that the grapes are grown in. The altitude of the vineyard site, the aspect of the vineyard site, how it's managed, how it's farmed, and many other things really create the terroir of a wine. Now, terroir is important because, as we'll notice in today's tasting flight, 2 wines that are made of the exact same varietal, let's say Pinot Noir, grown very close together, just 50 kilometers apart, will taste entirely different because of the different terroirs that they're grown in and because of the different vineyard sites that they come from. So I'm very excited for you to really dive in and experience this idea of specific vineyard sites, the terroir that they're reflected in, and we're going to be tasting wines from all 3 different vineyard sites. So we're actually going to start off with some sparkling wine with a 2013 Vintage Bub coming from Secrest Mountain. It's made from Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. Then we're going to go to the Switchback Vineyard site and have some of the Pinot Gris, and then from there we'll do a side-by-side of 2 different Pinot Noirs, as I said, grown just 50 kilometers apart, starting with the 2017 Garnet Valley Ranch Pinot Noir, and then finally finishing off with the 2019 Secrest Mountain Pinot Noir. And as I said, you're going to notice that these 2 Pinot Noirs are going to taste very different because of the terroir in which they're grown. So without further ado, why don't we start off with some sparkling wine and crack open the Vintage Bub. Personally, I like to start every tasting with some sparkling wine, and that's what we're going to do here with the Haywire Vintage Bub from 2013. Now, this is coming from the Secrest Mountain Vineyard site, and it's made in the traditional method of sparkling wine, also known as the Champagne method. It's also coming from Chardonnay and Pinot Noir grapes, which are the 2 grapes that you will usually find in Champagne. Now, one thing that you'll notice that's a bit different is that we use a crown cap to close the wine. Now, when it comes to a lot of sparkling wine, you'll see a cork and you'll see a cage, and then you'll see some foil over top of it. The reason we use the crown cap is we are very passionate about having a low carbon footprint and being a sustainable winery. By using a crown cap, we're actually using half of the amount of metal that you'd find with a cork and a cage and a foil with every single bottle. So it's far better for the environment. Also, by not having cork in there, we run no risk of cork taint, which actually affects quite a bit of wine that uses cork. So not only are you guaranteed that the wine will not be affected by cork taint, but you're also having a lower carbon footprint by choosing wines that use the crown cap. On top of that, it's quite easy to open. So you will notice as well that you still get that celebratory pop that you get from opening a bottle of sparkling wine. Right? And that's part of it, right? We want to have the experience, we want it to be a celebratory reason, and we still get that nice pop even by using a crown cap. So you're going to notice that I have 2 different glasses in front of me. I've got the more traditional sparkling wine flute, and then I've got what is called a coupe, right? Now this champagne coupe is how I personally like to drink my sparkling wine. And when it comes to the flute, one of the reasons a lot of people drink sparkling wine is because of the visuals that it provides. You can see the bubbles going all the way up to the top. But to really enjoy sparkling wine to its fullest, I always recommend using a coupe. So you're going to notice it's a little bit of a different experience from what you get from the flute, but in my opinion, a much better way to enjoy this wine. So 2 different ways of drinking sparkling wine with the flute. Visually it's beautiful, but then we've also got the coupe method here, which is my favorite. One of the things I like about it is it looks like you're in the 1920s, like you're maybe a character from The Great Gatsby. And to me, I don't know about you, but I think the Roaring Twenties are coming back. So keep that in mind. When it comes to drinking your sparkling wine, you can drink it out of a white wine glass, you can drink it out of a flute, or you can also drink it out of a coupe. Cheers. Now when it comes to the flavors and aromas that I get from this wine, personally I get a lot of creamy red apple and white grapefruit. But with traditional method sparkling wines, wines that go through a secondary fermentation in bottle, and particularly for this one, which is aged in bottle for 5 years before it's even released, you get autolytic notes, which add a lot of complexity. So personally, I get some brioche in this, some bread-like notes that are delicious on the palate for a sparkling wine. Now this sparkling wine is also very dry. So it has zero dosage, meaning that there's no sugar added when it's disgorged, so it's perfectly dry. You're also going to notice with this that the acidity is nice and high. Because these grapes are picked early in the season, they retain a lot of their acidity, so you get a beautifully balanced wine that's got some nice acidity in there, which makes it very food friendly. One of my favorite food pairings when it comes to a traditional method sparkling wine is to pair it with fried chicken. You could even pair this with something like eggs, which is traditionally very difficult to pair with, but sparkling wine, please remember, is not just meant to be drunk for a celebration. It's incredibly food friendly, and we should all be drinking more sparkling wine. And then when you've poured yourself a couple of glasses, all you need is a champagne stopper. You pop it on top, close the carbonation in, and that's going to be just as good tomorrow as it is while we're drinking it right now. The next wine we're going to taste is a 2018 Haywire Switchback Pinot Gris. So as I mentioned, when you come up to Summerland to visit us at the winery, as you drive up the driveway, on the left-hand side, you're going to see a beautiful 10-acre vineyard site, which is the Switchback Vineyard. Now, it was planted entirely with Pinot Gris grapes in 2006, has been farmed organically since 2011, and received its official organic certification in 2018. Now to me, this wine is very different than a lot of other Pinot Gris that I've had in the Okanagan. A lot of that comes down to the way that it was farmed, being obviously certified organic, not using any chemical herbicides or pesticides, but it also reflects the low intervention winemaking philosophy of our winemaker Matt Domain. So he's not adding any types of artificial yeasts or commercial yeasts. It's not inoculated. It goes through a native fermentation, right? And beyond that, it doesn't go through any oak treatment whatsoever. It's fermented in concrete, so low intervention winemaking, which really comes through in the final bottle and the glass that you drink. Now, when it comes time to savor the wine and to smell the wine, what you really want to do is start out by swirling the glass. That's going to bring some oxygen in there and really lift the aromas. So if we swirl the glass, bring the wine up to our nose, to me, I get a lot of stone fruit. I get a little bit of citrus fruit in there, right? Very pronounced, concentrated aromas. Smells beautiful. When it comes time to taste the wine, we want to give it a swirl, give it a bit of a sniff, and then as you sip the wine, try to bring a little bit of oxygen in there as well. So just slurp in some air. That'll again release the aromas, give you a little bit more of the flavor profile. Perfect. So to me, again, I get a lot of those citrus fruits. I get some stone fruits, a definite herbaceous quality in there as well. But one of the things that really stands out for me about this wine is the texture of the wine. Because it's fermented in concrete, it gives it a little bit more roundness to the body. It also goes through something called malolactic fermentation. It's a natural process where the malic acids in grapes are actually converted into more lactic acids, which are much, much more soft on the palate and makes it a little bit more enjoyable. This wine also spends 10 months on its lees, which gives it a little bit of salinity and even more body. So one of the ways that the Switchback Pinot Gris is different than a lot of Pinot Gris from the Okanagan is it just has far more texture, far more concentration on the palate, which makes it very food friendly as well. So it's big enough and bold enough to really stand up to a heavier meal. It's got some nice lively acidity in there as well, which will cut through the fat in a lot of meals as well. So the Switchback Pinot Gris, farmed organically on a 10-acre certified organic vineyard site right beside the winery there. Beautiful wine, very, very unique to the Okanagan and incredibly food friendly. We're going to finish today's virtual tasting with two Pinot Noirs. Now, despite being grown only 50 kilometers apart from each other, when you taste these two wines, you're going to notice that they are very, very different. So we'll start off with the 2017 Garnet Valley Ranch Pinot Noir. Now, as I mentioned, the Garnet Valley Ranch is the highest altitude site in the Okanagan, with the vines being grown between 580 and 650 meters of altitude. Now, the grapes were first planted here in 2014 under the guidance of Pedro Parra, who is a world-renowned terroir expert. We've planted Chardonnay and Gamay, Chenin Blanc, Riesling, and of course Pinot Noir. Now there's about 50 acres of vineyards planted there, with expansion for about another 40 acres planned. But beyond that, there's a lavender farm, organic vegetables being grown, hay fields, and because we are so focused on regenerative farming, there's even wildlife corridors within the vineyard site. We believe because the animals were there first, they of course should be able to roam freely. We have a herd of sheep that are there that help mow the grass, and we have a regenerative pond as well that has been reinstated, that has brought more wildlife back to the area, which is something that we're very proud of at Okanagan Crush Pad. So this is coming from the Garnet Valley Ranch site in Summerland, grown at very high altitudes. This of course is a Pinot Noir. It's a very thin-skinned grape, very, very difficult to grow, but makes beautiful wines, particularly at this altitude. So one of the things you're going to notice is it's a bit of a lighter style red wine. When you give the glass a bit of a swirl, bring it to your nose, straight off the bat you're going to notice some very beautiful red fruits in there. Some cherry, some red currant even. And when you give it a swirl and take a bit of a taste, you're going to notice some very finely integrated tannins. A lot of tannins for a Pinot Noir because of the altitude site that this is grown at. This makes this very, very complex. And when you drink this side by side with the Secrest Mountain Pinot Noir from 2019, you're going to notice that it's very different as well. So this is a beautiful wine coming from the Garnet Valley Ranch. Very food friendly. Goes with a lot of different hard cheeses. Big enough to stand up to a pasta sauce, and even big enough to stand up to a steak if you wanted to pair your Pinot Noir with a steak. So Pinot Noir is one of my favorite varietals, and it's always a fun exercise to try two different Pinot Noirs coming from two different vineyard sites with different soils, different altitudes, and different parts of the Okanagan to really see how terroir can affect the finished glass. Now before we taste the final wine in today's virtual tasting, I want you to think back to the Garnet Valley Pinot Noir that we just tasted. Think about the aromas, think about the tannins, think about the acid, so that you can compare the two wines. Despite being just 50 kilometers apart, these two wines are going to be completely different. So what we have in front of us now is a 2019 Secrest Mountain Pinot Noir. Now Secrest Mountain is grown in Oliver, British Columbia, and still at high altitude. So this vineyard site is found at 487 meters above sea level, not quite as high as Garnet Valley, but still a high altitude vineyard site. The vines here were first planted in 2000, and we found Gewürztraminer, Chardonnay, Pinot Blanc, Sauvignon Blanc, a few other different varietals, and of course Pinot Noir as well. In 2010, Okanagan Crush Pad started working with this vineyard site. In 2014, they were transitioned to organic viticulture, and then 2018 received organic certification when Okanagan Crush Pad purchased the vineyard site. So two different vineyard sites, Secrest Mountain and Garnet Valley Ranch, from two different regions in the Okanagan, and as you're going to notice, create completely different wines. So first off, we'll give the wine a bit of a swirl, and straight off the bat, you're going to notice that this has a very, very different aromatic profile. So while we're still getting some red fruits, some red berries, some cherry aromas in there, to me this is a little bit more delicate of an aromatic profile, and you're getting a little bit more of those forest floor aromas that you get with a lot of French Burgundian Pinot Noirs. Now where you're going to really notice the difference between the two Pinot Noirs is when you taste the wine. So as you taste the wine, again bring a bit of oxygen in there, and I want you first off to think about the tannins. So the tannins are those really mouth-drying sensations that we get from red wine. It provides structure to red wine. The Garnet Valley Ranch, they were quite present. Because the tannins are there, that would stand up to a steak quite nicely. The tannins to me are a lot softer in the Secrest Mountain Pinot Noir, which means I would maybe pair it with a grilled salmon, some softer cheeses, or maybe a tomato pasta sauce. All right, this is a beautiful wine, a little bit more delicate. You're getting some nice acidity, which is a benchmark to the Okanagan, and absolutely different than what you would find at Garnet Valley Ranch site. So 2 different wines, both coming from the Okanagan, just 50 kilometers apart, but very, very different expressions of the unique terroirs that you find from the Garnet Valley Ranch and that you find from the Secrest Mountain Vineyard site as well. Thank you for joining us on this virtual tasting. I hope you enjoyed the wines as much as I did. These are truly 4 of my favorite wines from Okanagan Crush Pad. I hope that you also learned a thing or two about terroir and how different vineyard sites express themselves in different wines. Now, if you want to learn more about these wines or about Okanagan Crush Pad itself, please visit us at okanagancrushpad.com, and I hope to see you at the winery soon. Hi, my name's Andrew Rains. Vineyard site, which is planted entirely with Pinot Gris grapes. When you come and visit us in Summerland and you drive up to Okanagan Sorry.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm still laughing at what I said. They're not just for celebrations. You don't need a reason to celebrate to drink sparkling wine. You really want to get out there and start drinking more sparkling wine. What am I going on about? The next wine we're going to take is the Haywire Switchback I did say that, right? Excellent start! It was planted entirely with Pinot Gris grape. So the best way to do that is to start by just simply swirling your glass.
Your glass.
Now before we taste tonight's final... It's dark out, how can I not say tonight? It's pitch. Thank you for joining on this... My confidence is plummeting.